So the first thing I'm going to do once I've opened up the scene is go to the content, avatar, base, and then import any of these Character Creator 3 Plus base meshes. So I went for this one. Okay. The first stage is just to use the morph sliders in order to generate a basic shape that we want our character to take. So you can, of course, edit the body as well. For this, the focus is just on the head. So the likeness that I'm going for is Ed Harris in this project. So I'll just give you an overview of how to use morph sliders, and I'll show you my scene. So if we navigate over here, you can see there's a huge list of morphs. And for this, because when I sculpt, I want to first sculpt in symmetry, I'm not going to affect the morphs asymmetrically here. So if I go to the eyes, for example, you can see that there's rights and lefts. I just want to do the uniform scales and changes. So like this, rather than changing them separately. So there's many sliders that you can play around with. I suggest just having fun with it and spending the time just to play around and see if you can get some good proportions established for the character that you're going for. So make sure to turn as well. So things like depth are going to affect things in the z-axis here. So you don't want to stay only on the front. You may not be able to notice the changes very clearly from this angle. So make sure you're turning the camera. And so when you have messed around with these as much as you like, then you end up with a final look for your morph. Okay, so this is the final morph scene. You can see over here. Just try to establish some basic proportions for Ed Harris here. Obviously, some of the features are like far too exaggerated, but it just gave me a good starting point. So if we want to bring this into ZBrush now to start sculpting, we just select the scene tab, shift select the base, eyes and teeth, and then press the GoZ icon up here. Okay, when you get this pop-up window here, just select the eyelashes and the tear ducts to separate those into different subtools. You can leave them in the same subtool. I just find it a bit cumbersome to work with. And then select either the A or the T pose. Current pose won't be an option when you import back, so A or T. And when you've done that, you just press GoZ, and you'll get this. So if I turn off this horrible material, if I just zoom into the head, like this, so you can see in the subtools section that we have separate subtools for the eyes, teeth, tongue, eyelash cards, and the tear ducts. The process here is to work in symmetry and begin to sculpt. So just a note really with this stage is that when working with a base, try not to overtly change the topology here. So you're welcome to make as big a changes as you like, just making sure that you leave some of these established landmarks where they are. So for example, this is the lip line. So if you want to change the lips, just remember that that represents the lip line. So regardless of how you change it, keep some things as they were. Essentially what I mean is this: don't change the topology like this. Make sure everything still feels even, and to ensure this, just smooth your topology back out again. But you're welcome to make as much changes as you like to the model and go for the likeness or the character that you're going for. And at the beginning, I suggest just using the move tool and making those larger changes, and then you can subdivide this model up. In my case, I did it up all the way up to 5, specifically because I had some smaller secondary details that I wanted to get in there. And you can, of course, then go into the clay build up and start sculpting in forms and have fun with it. So I'll show you my scene now. You can also change all of these subtools around. So if you want to edit the eyes, you can select the eye and you can move it. You can move the teeth around, so you can go into transparency and see where the teeth are, move those, and the tongue, and then of course reshape the eyelash cards to match, and the tear ducts also. This is all up to you if you want to move those around and change those. This is now an asymmetrical model, so I started off in symmetry for a while and then I broke the symmetry. So now to bring it back into Character Creator, select the model, and or you can select any subtool and press all. Right, so you get this pop-up window here. We can just update the mesh only, and A pose is what we exported at, so we leave at 8 pose, and then adjust burn to fit morph and make sure these are also checked on. Press update. Okay, so I'll show you before and after here. So this is before, after. So you may notice, oh, there's no detail on here from the sculpt, and the reason is because what Character Creator is doing is it's reading in this model, so the lowest base, the lowest poly model, and then it's smoothing it. So this is why there's no detail right now. So all that detail will come through later in the normal map. So for now, this is what we get, and you can continue to use the morph sliders to change things. I kept everything, all the changes done in ZBrush, so there was consistency there, but you can still go in here and then make changes to the face. So there's a lot of diversity here, and there's no destruction going on. You know, you can very easily go back into ZBrush, make changes, and then bring it back into Character Creator again. Okay, so before we start texturing, I just want to do some preparation. So if we jump into this tab over here, then edit facial, we can go under modify and under the eyes, blink. So if we drag it maybe around 70, 80, something like this, we can export the model out with a closed eyes blend shape. You can also do one for the open mouth, which I've done. You can see that in the article. So I'm just going to demonstrate for the closed eyes here. And just to obviously remind you that this is just very early stages. So we'll be able to continue to work on the likeness and the sculpt and the detailing and all of that stuff as we go. So from here, we can select the base and then file export and then OBJ character current pose. And just press OK, save it on the desktop or wherever you want. Okay, so now back into my ZBrush scene here. First I'm going to append this new eyes closed model. Okay, and you'll notice that there's the eyelashes and it also has the eyes and the teeth, which we don't want. So real quick, I'm going to polygroup, auto group, select this, and then modify topology, delete hidden. We can also make some changes to the eyes if they look kind of messy like this. So go into BMT and make some changes like this. It's just a blend shape, so you can remove it and bring the neutral in when you're texturing also. This is just to ensure a clean projection on the eyelids. I'm smoothing to make sure that the topology is even, like I was mentioning before. So, okay, export, and then we can delete this subtool now. And the trick is, in this subtool, I can make a new layer. Go down to the lowest subdivision level, import this model. You see it's appeared. If I subdivide all the way up, then I get the closed eyes with all of the detail. And the reason I'm doing this is because I actually want to texture on a higher subdivision level. This is a little bit too low. I can't really see some of those landmarks for when I project XYZ textures on. I want to be able to see where some of those wrinkles are, so I can line the textures up a bit better. So if we do number 3, but I don't want the entire body for this, just the head. So go to polygroups and then polygroup with UV. Here, I take the head, the eyes and the mouth bags, invert, and then you can just export this out. And we go eyes closed texturing. And there we go. So you can do the same thing for an open mouth, and then you can just swap between whichever blend shapes you like. Okay, so for some more texture preparation now, file import into Maya, the eyes closed that we just exported out of ZBrush, the texturing one. Which you can see here. Right, next what we want to do is make a plane. I can scale this plane up and bring it higher. Okay, so for now, if we go into our polyplane settings, and what you need to do here is check your multi-channel texture. So the one that I'm using is Bruno, and his size is 9,824 by 6,190. If we divide these numbers by 100, we set those in the width and height here. So if I say 98.24 and then 61.9, so these dimensions match exactly the image, and we can scale this down globally like this. Set the width and height subdivisions to somewhere between 100 and 200. So for mine, I set them both to 150. And then if I check in the UV editor now, you'll see that when I select the plane, the UVs have now constrained to these dimensions, which we don't want. So back into the attribute editor, if I turn normalization off, now when I select, the plane will encompass the entire tile, which is what we want. So once we've done that, I'm just going to assign this a Lambert and import my file. Okay, so you can see that the texture file has been imported. If I go to front view, select the plane, I'm going to rotate the plane 90 degrees this way, so here, and then scale it uniformly like this. Bring it out. The idea is I just want to briefly match. So if I turn off selection highlighting, it'll be easier to see. Just the landmarks here. So it's not going to obviously match. It's not the same face, and it's also flattened. So just an idea of where the mouth line sits and the eyes. So something like this, I think, will be fine. Okay. Once we've done that, we can export this plane out. And then we'll jump into wrap. Okay, so now in wrap, we hit tab, load geometry. We can load our plane, we repeat, and then load our model. And if I press F to focus, we can see that the plane and the model are here. Let's name these. So plane, and then model. And then from here I can load in an image like this, and I'm going to load in the texture, which you can see here. Okay, next do a select point pairs node, so the plane goes in first and then the model second, And if we jump to the visual editor, select the point pairs node, we can start joining. Before we do this, we can turn off the wireframe, select the model, turn off wireframe, and again here. So now we can start picking points. So if I sync the views, when you turn, it's probably best not to sync. So turn this off, leave this in front view, and then you can select like this. So the idea is we want to select the color information to the model information here. So for example, if I select the eye corner, that'll be here, the eye corner. The outer eye corner, then select this. Remember that the numbers have to correspond, so you can't have something like this. So 3 needs to be 3 up here. And maybe you can go up to maybe 50, 60, 70 points. It's up to you. Too many points and it can be a bit messy when wrapping. It's something that you can play around with. I think mine had about maybe 70 points. We can check in a second when I show you my scene. So the bottom of the nose. And once you've wrapped, you can redo these points and rewrap again if you're not happy with the placement. Again with the ears, for example, you can, ears are tricky, but it's good to get some coverage. So and you can continue with that. So that's the idea here. It's not very complicated. It's just matching points on here to here, and I'll show you my scene file now. Yeah, so essentially it's just a process of picking points, and then once you've done this, you just open up a wrapping node. So the yellow will go to the yellow slot over here, model into the second slot, plane into the first, and then you just hit compute. If you can't press compute, it's probably because you've got an inconsistent number of points. Maybe the plane has one too many, so make sure that there is an even number, and then press compute. Okay, so once the wrapping's finished, we can turn off our original models here, and we'll be left with this. So this is our wrap. You can see there are issues with the ears. Again, not to worry about that. And there's some stretching here and there, which we're going to fix now in ZBrush. So once you have this model ready, you just connect it to a save geometry node. Save this out and make sure you press compute current frame. And once you've done that, we'll jump into ZBrush. Okay, so jumping into ZBrush now, I've just imported the wrapped plane. Inside of texture, I've imported the texture flip V, texture map, and then bring that in here. Okay, I'm going to move this just above the model so I can flick up and down and double check like this. I'm going to demonstrate on the ear how we can clean this up now. So if I move first to the move topological tool here, and the best method for this is to force the geometry here to match the sculpt as best as you can. Okay, another tip for this also is to subdivide. So I did 2 subdivisions on this. Just means that you can get a smoother projection. Okay, so something to notice here is that the color information needs to match. So if we jump into flat view mode, we can see there's horrible distortion here of the texture map, right? So what we want is to match the color to the model. So I want to make sure that this inside of the ear matches as best as I can. So I'm going to try and work out from here where this lies, which is around here. You can just jump back into this mode if you like. We can smooth. Okay, once we've done this, just very briefly, very roughly here, we can mask this whole region. we can blur the mask, and then make sure that these are the only two subtools on, so your plane and your model, your sculpt, and then you can press project all and note the color information here. Okay, and you can see what's happened to this. We've got a projection. Continue to smooth. It's mainly just matching the color information to the sculpt, so that's all you really want to do here. You just want to make sure that they match. So maybe push this back a bit. You can mask again, blur, project, like this. And then now when I turn to flat view, you can see that the color information matches better. So I can continue to do this. Maybe move this inside. And remember to double check into your material mode as well. And then you can repeat this process for the entire face, just making sure that you're happy with where the color information lies. If you get something wrong, say the laugh line is completely off, then it will be like that in the displacement and the utility, meaning that you either have to hand fix that inside of Mari, or you're going to have to come back to this stage and sort it out. So I'd suggest spending the time to make sure that you're happy with where the color information lies here. So again, just projecting and then smoothing like this. Okay, and then you can do the same. Let's do this laugh line here. So you can see the laugh line. So I need to move the color information over. And then you can just simply just project this like this, you see? So you don't have to be too clean about it. I mean, once you project, then it will look a lot better. So there, so the laugh line now matches a bit better. You can continue to move that a little bit more if you like. And like I said, repeat this for the entire face, just masking sections and making sure that everything feels clean and it's matched. It doesn't take too long, but spend the time to make sure it's clean. And then once you're done, you'll have something like this, which was my version. And yeah, so if I can flick up and down now, you can see the difference. So I moved this these lines as well to match my sculpt, cleaner lips, moving the eyelids in the right shape as well, bringing the eyebrows down. Obviously, massive cleanup on the ears here. Yeah, and so once we've done that, we'll export this at subdivision level 3 out, and then jump into wrap to transfer our textures over. We're in wrap now, so I'm going to load in my geometries here. So let's start with the plane, and then rename, and then the model. Alright, so once we've done those, then we can load in our image, connect this to the plane. And off the wireframes again. Alright, transfer texture now. Because as soon as I connect this, it's going to start transferring. So I want to make sure that I set my dimensions first. So A192 by A192. Okay, once you've done that, then connect. Okay, and you can see the texture has been transferred here. Extrapolate image does this. So save the image out. Okay, and then make sure to save it out, name it, quality at 100, save it as a TIFF, and then make sure you press compute current frame. Once you've done that, then you can just load in the displacement image. It will run the entire network through, and you'll have the Same result for the displacement, and then again for the utility. Save all three of them out, and then we'll jump into Mari and do some cleanup. Alright, so in Mari now, I'm just going to run you through the cleanup process. First thing I actually done before I done anything with the cleanup process is inside a Character Creator. If I navigate to the materials and I select the head, I can save out this base color texture here. So I can right click texture files and then save the texture out. And I can import this into Mari as like a base. So the XYZ is only going to cover really the ears and the immediate facial region here. So not the neck or the scalp or the back of the head. So this is actually really good to fill in those areas. So if I remove this hair, then the process was that if I remove these layers also, so we started with that CC diffuse, which you can see here, and then I added on the XYZ diffuse. And just to clarify, I made the 3 channels, so albedo, displacement, utility, all of these are set to 8K and then 8-bit. So you right click, add channel, and then you go to 8K, 8-bit, and you just press for the model, okay? These are then color corrected and to match, so obviously the colors won't match, they look like this originally. Like this. So I tried my best to color correct them both to kind of give me a reasonable color. For his skin. And then the next thing to do is just to fill in areas. So for example, for this eyebrow mask, I copied the color correct node for the XYZ diffuse into this layer, because what I'm going to do now is import the image into the image manager, and I can drag this image in. So whenever I project this image, it will apply that color correction, so the skin will stay the same tone, and I can then turn them both off if I wanted to, or change them both. So the process would be for the eyebrows, for example, if I repeat this, and if you can't see, go into tool properties and then turn down the preview alpha like this. The best way to do eyebrows, I think, go into the UV mode, it's easier. Line them up as best as you can, so you've got the right size. And then just sit the eyebrow just below, and then paint that region out. So it's hard to see right now because I haven't applied the color correction, so I can do that now. So if I project or bake anything in, if I go to layers, if I go to this eyebrow mask, I can copy, go to create a color stack, I can delete this one, and then paste. Let's try that one more time. Let's take this, copy it, layer, paste. Okay, so you can see when I click on the layer again, that they match now. And then you can just continue to fill it in. Like this. And then press B to bake, and then you have an eyebrow fill. So it's really easy to do, and it's a great way just to fill in any sort of artifacting areas that you don't like the look of, like maybe inside of the ears. You can just go back and, you know, continue to paint. You can also use the slurp tool. So for example, if you want to project this, before you press bake, you can click over here, slurp, increase the size of the brush, and you can move this around like this, and then you can press B to bake this, for example. This is obviously something you'd probably want to do more of in the 3D view, because I'm not entirely sure where that sits. So I can delete this layer now. Okay, and you can see, so that's projection. So essentially what I just showed is what I've done all over the face here. You see I've done it in the ears. And then the eyebrow mask. And then a fill. And the fill is going to be filling up these lips here, you can see. Okay, and once that's done and you're happy, you can right click, export flattened, export all layers flattened, and then save that out. And then I'll show you the displacement. If I turn off the copy channel. So the exact same process I just explained is used here also. So using the actual displacement map here, dragging it in and projecting to just fill in areas like removing eyebrows and eyelashes, which if I turn these layers. Okay, so first of all, use the 50% gray to remove any information that I didn't want, and then a projection to fill in those areas. Make sure there's still detail. You don't want to have a block gray color in the middle of the face. And then a final projection. I think I was just fixing some areas that I felt like the wrinkles that I felt maybe wanted to be repositioned. And the lips also, you can see in here. Okay, and once you're happy with that, rather than exporting the whole map out, which you can of course do, and then in Photoshop you can split them out into RGB. And what I've done was on the copy channel here now, I've selected a copy channel layer. And then with the layer you can choose either RGB, so start with red and then right click, export flattened, export all layers flattened, and then you can do the exact same thing with green, and then the same thing with blue. And like I said, right click, export flattened, export all layers flattened, and then you have 3 maps for the displacement. And then back into channels and then utility, I mean exactly the same thing again. So just using a black color instead now, just to kind of fill in everything. You can choose to leave the ears if you like. I painted all this out, just kept the immediate face region. And then again, a fill. So just using the map, bringing it in and just projecting, just to fill in those areas like this. Copy channel again, RGB. Save each of those out. And then once you have done all of that, then you'll have 7 maps. You have 1 diffuse, 3 displacement, and 3 utility maps. Okay, and then next we're going to be jumping into ZBrush, and we're going to be applying the displacement onto the model. Alright, so I'm back inside the Character Creator now, and I'm going to select the base, go Z, make sure the head is selected this time, A pose. Okay, so in this scene now what you should have is the head separated from the body. So if I show you what this looks like, you should have something like this. And what this means is we can now subdivide this up all the way up to 7 subdivs and be able to get enough resolution to apply our displacement onto. So that's the first thing I'm going to do, which is subdivide this 7 times. So up to 7, so nearly 17 million polys. And I'm going to make a new layer. And then now I'm going to bring in my previous sculpt, so the level 5 sculpt, so I can project. Okay, so I've just appended my head here. And what I'm going to do is project. So make sure all the other subtools are turned off, just the 2 heads showing. Select your new head here. Drop down to the lowest subdivision level. And then press project. Press D to level up, project again, and keep doing this until you hit the same subdivision level, so 5. Great, okay, so once we've done this, we can delete this head, so you can see that they match. So I've got these 2 extra subdivision levels now where I can apply the displacement. So to do this, turn this layer off. We can call this the projection layer. We can also just bake this in if we wanted. I'm going to make a new layer now. This will stay on all times. This is like a permanent fixture now. So if I go to alpha and then import, and then import my R displacement first, UVs for the head are actually flipped vertically, so this will actually work fine. Because in ZBrush you need to flip vertically, but it's already flipped, so there's no need to flip it again. So what we can do is go to Displacement Map, select Disp R, and if I increase the intensity, you can see the map being applied now. The values that I used were 0.3 for the red, 0.2 for the green, and then I think 0.05 for the blue. So once you're happy with the look, obviously it depends on the map you're using. I'm going for older skin, so I wanted a little bit of stronger wrinkles and details. So again, once you're happy, press apply. Okay, and then name this layer to red or R or primary, turn it off, make a new layer. Now import the green. Okay, go back to displacement map, bring the green in. This was at 0.2. Apply. Okay, and then turn this layer off and rename it to G. New layer, import the blue. Okay, so once you've done this and you have all the displacement layers added, if I turn them all on, you'll see that you get this very, very harsh looking skin. So we can turn these down and fine tune them depending on the look you want. Before I do that, I just want to morph any inflation back to its original shape. So if I turn these back off again, store a morph target, turn all these back on, press a new layer, down to the lowest, morph the shape back, and then subdivide up. Okay, and this is now a morph layer, so we call this morph. So the values you choose for this are up to you. So I think mine was around 0.55 here, 0.5 here, and 0.4 here. Okay, so again, you can fine tune these values, and then now it's kind of the more artistic side where you can make a new layer, and then you can begin sculpting more details. A little tip here I'll share is that if you want to sculpt details at a high resolution, so say like we can drop down maybe 2, and rather than using say like a clay build up, when I sculpt I lose the detail. If you want to remain the detail but you want to sculpt, what you can do is press BE for the elastic brush, much lower intensity, make changes like this. See, I can add in like moles or just more detail without actually destroying the displacement and having to turn off the layers, and you can actually visualize as you're sculpting and you're working. Remember to turn it all the way down if you want to make larger changes. So if you want to use the move tool to still make proportion changes, do this at a low subdivision level. And try not to smooth here, because then when you subdivide up, your detail will slowly disappear over time the more you keep doing it. So yeah, enjoy the sculpting process here. I'll show you my sculpt now. Okay, so this is my scene. There are many layers, so many sessions went into this. Okay, and yeah, it takes time, you know, to get the look you want, and it's definitely not perfect. Still some fine tuning that's left to do here, and a few more changes, but overall I've managed to keep all of the displacement detail, not destroy it, even though I've been making lots of proportion changes and fixes to the face. So just bear in mind that there are tools like the elastic brush that allow you to make sculptural changes without actually destroying the displacement. Once you're happy with this, you can then export the normal map out. So if we go up to Z plugin, multi-map exporter, and then normal, this will be at 4K, and the export options that you want to use under normal map are from subdivision level 1, because that's the level that Character Creator is going to be reading out at. So level 1, and then adaptive will increase times massively, so you don't have to have that on. And then flip G, and then you can just press create all maps and then export the map out. All right, and then next I'll be talking about how we can make the roughness map. Okay, so the roughness map is completely up to you how you want to go about doing this. I can give you my method here, which is just something I experimented with. You can do it many different ways. You can even just hand paint it completely yourself. The method I used here is I imported the utility blue channel, which is this, which is like a fake spec map. If you invert this, so Control I, and then I've also imported the red channel of the displacement map. I can invert this also. If I then select and copy this over the top of our utility, and I set this to multiply, we get this sort of looking map here. And I thought it was quite useful because there's already like darker regions on, say, like the nose and the cheeks where there's more speck on the face. I can then create a mask for this map. Select black. You can actually do this in symmetry. There's a symmetry thing here, a vertical one here. If I paint out, obviously not with a harsh brush, let's do soft. You can paint out elements that you don't want. Maybe they're too dark, and you can of course turn this down to make something more subtle. So something that I done was just painting some of this out. Just thinking about where the speck areas of the face are. So the mouth region where the beard is going to be a bit more rough, and then the nose will be more shiny. This is just a method, you know, totally up to you how you want to go about doing this. You can also make another layer, pick like a dark gray color, and then paint on. So maybe the lower lip will be more shiny. You can also add more shine to the neck and the hair area. So again, very quick, because inside a Character Creator you can adjust different regions of the face, how shiny or how rough it is, using sliders. So this is just like a base, so it doesn't have to be perfect, and you can still iterate and test it in Character Creator and then come back to Photoshop and make changes. So my one looked like this. So literally following the same method. So I've got the multiply set and then the mask painted here, and I created this, and I then just saved this out as a TIFF. And then what we'll do now is import everything we've just done so far into Character Creator. Alright, so for the final stage of this part, just bringing this new sculpt back into Character Creator. So just a reminder, this was our old one. We press all, reshape the lash cards and the tear ducts as well for this, and just let that think. So you get a pop-up like this. Update the mesh only, and make sure these are checked on and it's the same pose. So before, after, and we're going to be look demoing everything later. So we'll jump into hair creation next.